Without wasting much of our time, we'll move to the next session. To anchor the next session, please welcome with me Mr. Lampe to the podium as the moderator next session. A round of applause for him as come up, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's been an engaging session so far, and I think the last one was very, very intense. And some of the conversations that we've held towards the tail end of the Q&A of Mr. Shenyalitu's session is what we are going to be exploring even more as we go into discussing regulation in the age of shifts around technology, culture, and new business models. So I think it's very apt that we are segueing into this panel at this time. So I would like to invite the panelists to please join me on stage. Please welcome Dr. Emmanuel Agu, who is the chairman of the Advertising Standards Panel. I'd like to also invite Alhaji Dr. Tijani Ahmed Ramalan of Atta Communications and Mr. Raphael Idu of POC. Please join me and please welcome them as they come on the stage. Dr. Emmanuel Agu. Just please sit down. Okay. Great. Now, obviously, based on the conversations that have been held so far, and from yesterday and the latter part of the last discussion, the issues around regulation are big in the minds of everyone within the industry. And I believe that regulators and regulation has a number of rules. One is to ensure ethical standards, governance within the advertising industry. Two, regulation has a role in terms of protecting the consumer. And it also does have a role in terms of safeguarding the industry and indeed growing the industry. Now, there have been obviously challenges within the context of regulation within the industry, and especially in the shifts that we have experienced in recent years. We've seen the rise of technology, we've seen the move of a transitional convergence between traditional media, digital media. We've seen cultural changes, demographic shifts. We've also seen an imperative of looking at new business models. So to kick off this conversation, I'd like to ask you, Raphael, what is your take, and if you can just please try and give this in about 3 to 4 minutes. What is your take in terms of regulation and what needs to change to better address the shifts that we are experiencing within the industry from a technological perspective, culture perspective, and a new business model?
Okay. Okay, I think I can hear myself, so I would have preferred you started with the regulator so that I walk on very eggshells, but the DG is in here. I love Akon, let me say that first. My agency is extreme, so if you want to blacklist me for the things I say. Okay, so I think that the major challenge and what's leading to the response, and people have been talking, and if you notice, there is some response that makes you realize that even though it's not being said, I'm going to try to say the quiet parts out, and please bear with me.
Please, let's be open and transparent. It's
Yes.
all about growing the industry.
Yes, so the quiet parts are not being said. I think that a lot of people seem to have some challenges and even if it's not being said, it's there. So I will start from the business model, because most times, most problems are a business model problem. I think that there's a divergence between the business model of the regulator and the business model of the agencies that it regulates. I often say this, and I compare the regulation of advertising as the most regulated in Nigeria industry, in Nigeria as we speak today, right now. And the reason is because, and there are many reasons. People say, oh, advertising is such a powerful tool for orientation and for making people move forward and things like that. But media also is, and I doubt bond is even as regulated as advertising today. I doubt that every time bond has to flight news, they need to get it vetted. So the question is, as a regulator, does your regulation stop with the regulation of the practitioner, or does it extend to the regulation of the practice? Whereby once the Nigerian Bar Association gives you that certificate as a member of the association vetted by them, it is now your duty to, on a daily basis, create work with that regulation in mind. But what happens is a bit different for us with our business model. What happens is we get vetted by the regulator, then the regulator vets every single work, all of our practice, eventually. I mean, a few of us have pondered solutions to this. I don't know if we should say that now, or that's something we'll take some time later in the conversation.
So we'll take it later in the conversation.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so thanks. And that's a good point to also move. So I'll come to you, Dr. Emmanuel Agu. Raphael has spoken about the issue around, there seems to be some disconnect in terms of the business model on the part of regulation. And I think in terms of here, I'm going to steer this conversation. It's not just going to be about the regulator. I think we'll be talking more around regulation. Okay, and I think there are two different ways in which you can look at that. Yeah, the regulator has a play role, but there's also the aspect of self-regulation that we can also look at in the context of the industry. Now, as chairman of the Advertising Standards Panel, you obviously will be quite involved in this. So how do you see the state of regulation within the industry, and how can we make modifications that can make things more efficient, better, in terms of, one, protecting the consumer, but also ensuring that it's not impacting upon business performance?
Okay, I think looking at it from the regulator point of view, one must first and foremost understand that the job of the regulators is not to stifle creativity or to make things difficult for the advertisers or for the agencies. And this is a very big misconception that people always have about the regulator. And not until I became the ASP chair and I started seeing submissions in terms of what clients and agencies have submitted for vetting. And then I began to understand that vetting is a very serious business where the people or the agencies or the clients that are being vetted do not first and foremost self-regulate themselves. While I was working in Guinness, there is what we call the Diageo Marketing Code, DMC. The Diageo Marketing Code was meant to help the brand practitioners to self-regulate themselves. These are the things that you're not supposed to do, and these are the things that you're supposed to do. And when those materials goes through regulation, they barely return back unvetted. But what you see these days is that maybe from the client, maybe from the agency, in the name of being creative, or in the name of trying to churn out something that is within the modern day trend, you violate the advertising code. And I ask questions. How many of us here have the APCON advertising code, the code of practice? How many have the book? How many understands the advertising laws as was enacted? Because we start from awareness. If you don't understand the code, you are likely going to break it. And ignorant of the law is still not an excuse. So I've seen so many things that people put forward. As an advertiser, and I know the bounds with which you can allow some creativity to scale through. And I know the bounds with which those creativity breaks the law. So, first and foremost, advertisers, agencies have to self-regulate. And in those self-regulation, needs to understand what the advertising code of practice is saying and understand the advertising law. If you have this awareness, it's very difficult that you might break the code. I give an instance in one of the materials that I vetted. I will not mention the name of the brand, but they made a submission and says they were world number one. World number one. And they put the name of the brand. How do you substantiate that you're world number one? There is no document, there is no proof to substantiate your claim. And then we wrote them back and said, please substantiate this claim. And when they came back with their substantiation, guess where they are the world number one? They are world number one in shipping. For what period of time? Q1, 2024. So you are world number one in shipment, Q1, 2024. But you send to the regulator, world number one. So if we take chances and approve such material, the competing brands within those categories will come after us. And even as we have approved it, in their own creative ingenuity, when I saw that material flighted, I laughed. Because as an advertiser before, I know that these guys try to play smart. So they magnified the world number one. Maybe if there is a font size of 120, they put the world number one at a font size of 120, and then the shipment, Q1 2024, is like a font size of 10. So it makes it difficult for someone who is driving through, who is seeing those communications, to see the authenticity of where they are actually world number one. But guess what? It has passed through regulatory approval because they have provided evidence, research data that shows that they are world number one in shipment, Q1 2024. The moment we gave that approval, in the real execution, they downscaled the shipment, Q1 2024, and upscaled the world number one. So when you see things like this, you begin to wonder, is there an intention to beat the regulator? Is there an intention to cheat at the beginning? And once you sense those intentions, once you see those intentions, then you send the material back for substantiation. So question is, why do we like to break the laws, even when we know the laws? And why do we want to foster creativity in breaking the laws? And then if the regulators are not smart and careful, they will not be able to stop such a communication, and it will create chaos in the society. So,
all right. Okay, so thank you. So what you speak to is there's a place for self-regulation. The regulator has a role as well in trying to ensure ethical standards and also fairness to all parties concerned. Okay. All right, so I'll move on to Alhaji Tijani as we build on this conversation. And in looking at the issues of new business models, and we speak to, earlier on when I started, I spoke to about 3 key roles that we can look at the regulator from. And one of those that I spoke to, and which was also alluded to in the earlier presentation, is about growing the industry. So, Alhaji Tijani, what thoughts do you have in terms of how regulation can help to grow the advertising industry? Alhaji Tijani.
Thank you very much. I need to apologize here that Alhaji Tijani is not here. He's indisposed. He's out of the country at the moment for medical reasons. But he sends his felicitation to the gathering. It's such a robust and exciting gathering. My name is Dr. Mahmoud Tunde Hassan. I'm here to stand in his stead. The thing with the regulation, the way I see it, especially from our own standpoint, we have a triangular arrangement here. You have the advertisers, you have the agencies, and then you have the broadcast platform. I'll be speaking from the point of view of the broadcast platform, because that's where we are. There seems to be some kind of a disconnect between what the three points of the angles want. The agencies have their own drive, the broadcast platforms have their own objectives, and the regulator have its own objective. What should have been the glue should be the regulator, holding everybody together and being as transparent and as objective and as comprehensive as possible. But I just want to say at this point, it will appear that through time, while the two other points of the triangle are refining and redefining their interests, the regulators seem stagnant, very static, and unable to key into changing times. There have been shifts. Technology is changing a lot of things, and without pressing the issue, the shift in technology has been very, very profound. And perhaps the most profound of all the dynamics in the media and communication is around the media and communications. You have a situation where the regulator is unable to catch up with these dynamics. Take, for instance, what the chairman of the Advertising Standards Panel has just said. You passed, you vetted, and approved a copy about being first in whatever. The level of creativity of that, or how the agency applies its creativity within the space of compliance, should not be the fault of the agency. The agency blew up first to about 100 and 120. It's not a breach of the industry, of the regulation. What has happened is, through time, the regulator, for instance, from the point of view of the broadcaster, has been unable to understand the dynamics and the changes, the shifts in the industry. Technology has brought in a lot of challenges and also a lot of opportunities, which the regulator doesn't seem to understand. Take, for instance, the social media platform and all the elements, the different devices that are at the disposal of the broadcaster to do instant media, to move faster, citizens' journalism. The regulator doesn't seem to be able to catch up with that. As I speak, within this audience, you probably have cameras, and you're taking shots. And you can also label those shots, and you post it. In fact, at the moment, there is even an ongoing argument as to who even is a journalist. Who is the journalist? Everybody can do it. So the space is being demystified by technology, and it's opening up the space. It's an open source at the moment. The regulator doesn't seem to understand that these shifts have moved. And when we talk about shifts in this space, the tendency is to look at social identities, the norms, the values. But these shifts we're talking about business models. We're talking about business models. Nobody's talking about offering products anymore, selling products. We are offering services. People are not talking about owning things. They're having access. data, people are more interested in the data of products than even the products, because that's what you use. You can imagine the enormous amount of data that is being mined on a daily basis using technology. And this is also within the media space. Take WhatsApp, for instance. The enormous amount, every one of us here, we've dumped our personal data, even on WhatsApp, and that is being mined on a daily basis.
Right.
These I'm aware of. How can the regulator plug into these changes, these shifts within the technology space? And this technology also brings along with its own brand of culture, beyond social identities. The tendency has been to look at social identities. So through time, to wrap up on this, I think regulation in Nigeria has been rather mercantile. It's about revenue. It's about how much money we can get from sanctions. Even the fines that come with sanctions are monetary fines. Everything is about revenue and finance. So to that extent, regulation in Nigeria has remained within the space of mercantile approach. And sanctions are punitive. My take is that regulations should be such that can even incentivize performance, incentivize standards, incentivize best practices. Who is talking about incentivizing performance? We pay more attention with so much energy spent on sanctions and what revenues can be generated from sanctions. Through time, in the past 5 years, whatever sanctions that have been imposed for any breach has been laced with money. So, at this point, what I can just say is that from the point of view of the broadcaster, the regulation is rather mercantile, and that is not helping the growth of industry. And there is a disconnect between the interest, the cultures, the shifts that the space has provided, and the capacity of the regulator to understand these shifts, to understand these dynamics, and be the glue for all.
All right, fantastic. Great points that you made. I'm just going to quickly highlight the need to go beyond just revenue generation for the regulator, and for the regulator to have a greater impact in terms of growing the industry. And I think that's a key point that we need to reinforce. So I'm going to come back to you, Raphael. And you had some ideas.
We all have ideas.
So you're representing us right now. Yes. But, so I'm going to ask you to speak to one or two of those ideas in the next 3-4 minutes. But I would also like you to speak to an issue that was raised in the earlier presentation, the role of the regulator taking experience from the insurance and bank industry around the issue of consolidation. What is your view in that regard, especially as a means of growing the industry, using regulation to grow the industry? While Raphael ponders about that, I'd like to say that if you do have one or two questions, we'll be happy to take a couple, literally a couple, two questions or comments about this topic. We aim to wrap this up in the next 10-15 minutes. So, Raphael.
Awesome. So I'm going to take from some of the things that have been said. I agree with Dr. Ago. I think that the sector needs to be regulated. So we're not divergent on regulation. And I'm sure if we take a vote of voice here, we all agree we want to be regulated. Abi, we all agree. The business model is the challenge. And in what has been said about incentivizing regulation, therein lies the key. Therein lies the opportunities. And there are plenty of opportunities. We spoke about, in a subcommittee, we spoke about the fact that what if we have been vetted? And I agree, sometimes agencies do write these things or say these things that are outlandish. But you see, where there is no incentivization, there almost is no ownership. And sometimes why these agencies do not go hard on it, do not even know what the regulatory code is because there's no ownership on the agency's part. All they feel is that, hey, they're going to come, hammer us, we'll pay, boom. So what if the model existed where you have vetted us, we are vetted. We are the ones now, maybe every once a year, we come back to you, have a compliance officer, mandatory for all agencies to do a compliance course, a refresher course on what the rules are, what the vetting is. So once you do that, it is now our job to vet on your behalf, because that's what mostly exists in most industries. Now, we vet on your behalf. We charge a fee on your behalf, a vetting fee on your behalf. We hold a 10% processing because we have to maintain a compliance manager, or a 20% processing. We pay the rest to you like a withholding tax kind of arrangement, where we are the ones actually, now we're being incentivized and we're being profitable. So we hold this compliance officer. Every agency has a compliance officer that goes through a vetting course every year to renew and refresh. We vet across the whole channels, both our clients, and this is also a way to mop up influencers. The truth is that there are lots of content creators. You can't match. There's also a scale problem. I don't know how big Akon can become to vet all of the content coming out from everybody in Nigeria. The scale, there's always, when they look at a business model, scale is always where the market should go. Agencies can scale better than you. If every agency hires 1 or 2 compliance officers, we can scale better than you. Take our Akon registration number as our vetting code. We go out there, we vet clients, even influencers that don't have agency, they have to vet their work through us. We take that fee on your behalf, we remit to you. We hold our compliance fee, and we move on. Now, there must be a second level of check. So let's say there's a second level of check. You spoke about something. You said that when there are issues that can, you use the word, you said somehow like affect or destroy society. I don't know. You use something about destroy society or impact society. I can tell you that one of the things that have affected and impacted society, one of the content that actually did that, the Sterling Bank content that everybody was aware of. Now think about it. Who actually made that content go down? It was the public. Where did the public go? To social media. So why not create a toll number or a toll website where the public can report content that is against the values of the society? And that's another revenue generation angle. So the public went public because the public didn't know who to report to. Once the public knows I can report to you through a website or a number, then the public will come to you. That's another revenue generation funnel for Akon. Why I keep talking about revenue generation is that I think these problems are not about do we want to get vetted or not. And I don't think the problem is about we want to vet you. I think at the end of the day, there's a divergence in the revenue model that both the regulator and the regulated are applying. So that I think is where the confluence can be, the issues can meet. You asked the second question. Do I take it now, or do I give him time to?
Let's just hold on that question for now. We would like to take some questions from the room, and then we'll come back to some questions. But while we're waiting for those questions, I think the key point that you highlighted is, and that's why I said earlier on that it's not just about the regulator. It has to be about regulation. And there's a role to play for the industry and everybody who practices in the industry about self-regulation and what you call a more holistic regulation. Not just a regulator, not just agencies, includes clients as well. So we have to look at it from a holistic perspective, also protecting the consumer. And I think that once we have that mindset, it's not a them against us mindset. A holistic approach is how we'll get better regulation and so ensure that the consumer is protected and that the industry grows. I think that's a key point to put out there. We'll take any 2 questions, comments.
So we have a question here, please.
Okay, if you have questions, just raise up your hand first so we'll know how to run through. We have 1, 2, 3,
Thank you.
4. First of all, please, a round of applause to our panelists so far. I think the contributions have been quite timely and innovative. Who do we have there for me?
Thank you. My question is to the chairman of the advertising standard panel. From what the other participants have said to you, I think...
Said to us.
Said to us. Look at your vetting procedures as a way of not just correcting whatever you want to correct, but look at it as you're rendering service for the person who is giving you that copy to vet to do business. Because we're all businessmen. I submitted my materials to you for vetting because I want to sell my brand and I want to make money. So as you are the gatekeeper of whatever copies we're sending to you, know that the company has other issues to cope with. Adding your own might just kill that business.
Okay.
That's how I want you to look at it.
Yeah.
So you gave an example that somebody was, putting out a copy and saying we are first in so and so business. What if that copy was okay by the rules of advertising, but you just decide to make sure there is everything wrong with it? Because from the onset, your perception is that everything that is coming, somebody somewhere is trying to say something that is against the law, the advertising law. I give you an example.
Okay.
Let me give you my own example. I submitted a copy for vetting, and I said, buy so and so thing, and you get free gift. And I paid for acceleration 1 million naira. You sent it back. That why should I say I'm going to give somebody free gift? What are the free gifts? I should mention all the free gifts I want to give on the newspaper. Okay, I mentioned only one, because of course I couldn't mention everything. Then you sent it back that I should mention the number of gifts I'm going to give out. How do I know how many people are going to buy the gifts? So that I will now know the number to give out. I was frustrated for over 8 days after I paid the 1 million naira. I'm saying this because at the end of the day, my client will think that I am the person who is not competent.
Okay, I think the point is made. You want to just speak on a generic sense.
Maybe we should just take two more
Okay,
questions.
we'll take
one now, and then we can.
Right.
Sorry, before the next question, just a quick one to the audience. We have Slido, where you have the opportunity to type in your questions. So if you have questions, we might not be able to take it here for those watching online as well. So head over to Slido and put in your questions, and we'll put it up on the multimedia screen. Next question, please.
Thank you. To the audience and to the panelists. It's not that...
So sorry, sir. Your name and what you do. So sorry.
My name is Rufai Ladikmo. My agency is Agile Communications. Now, nobody on this side of the aisle is against regulation. I can tell you that for free. But we encounter a lot of problems from the agency standpoint. And the problem is that the people that are vetting our work, they do not have sufficient knowledge of what is called creative advertising. You can't place, you cannot be a judge without being a lawyer. So simple process. The last ASP chairman that we had, Madam Omon Miwoduni, one of the best copywriter, one of the best creative writer, one of the best communication individual. If you count 5 in this country, she will be 4 or 5. Why? He was the chairman, she was the chairman. She had the knowledge. Without the knowledge, you cannot operate. Okay? So it's not even a question. I served on ASP years back. In fact, we always give awards to agencies that comply very well, to encourage other people to do the same thing. Now, Mr. Emmanuel Agu, you're a great guy, no doubt about it. But I need you to please allow yourself to take some crash courses in creative advertising. Because at the end of the day, the buck will stop at your desk. In addition to that, the people working under you, I'm coming, please. This is a very big industry issue. You see, no, I'm not going personal here.
Can I ask that you wrap
The
up,
people
Mr.
working under you,
Ladipo?
we will also provide crash program for them, so that when they are really going through all these materials, they will be able to identify what is good from what is bad.
Okay, all right. I would, are there any other questions? I'm going to do a bit of a veto here now.
Yeah.
Any
So I have
other
one final
last
question
question?
from this
And
angle.
let it be a question.
Question, please.
All right.
Question.
So first of all, sorry, 1 second before it's getting hot in here, isn't it? The AC is working, but it's getting hot.
Okay, so I'm going to step in here.
Okay, sir.
And say one more question, and let it be a question asked in 60 seconds.
Thank you very much. My name is Annie Esianity. I'm the GM Marketing and Communication for Ibom Air. And my question is directed at Mr. Emmanuel Agu about impeding creativity. I'd say as much as you say that's not what you stand to do, it's almost like what it is at the moment, because contents are derived at the drop of a hat these days. I send something to you, I need you to vet it, and you come back and say it's not. I mean, I have all the backlogs of, so the question is, what do you consider as superlatives? When you say there are superlatives, if somebody says world class, he didn't say number one in the world. Is that a superlative? Why would you shut that down? So perhaps you need to give us a list of what you consider superlatives so we know what guides us when we work.
Okay. All right. Okay, so good question. So I'll call on Emmanuel to respond. Before Emmanuel responds, I think that it's important to reiterate again that what this topic is highlighting is how we better navigate the shifts and utilize regulation as a tool to, again, let me repeat the three things I said at the beginning. Protect the consumer, ensure ethical and fair standards, and third, to grow the industry. It's important that we're not overemphasizing the operational issues which Emmanuel will speak to. All right? I think it's very important. Yes, Dr. Agu.
Okay, I feel the tension in the room, and if I tell you I didn't expect this, I will be lying to everyone. I feel the tension, and it's normal. But just to also say that the law is the law, the code is the code. We cannot apply emotions to law. My sister that talked about materials being returned to her because she put prizes are to be won. You did not state the number of prizes. I have been an advertiser for 22 years. I have run promotions. I worked in Guinness. I worked in Nigerian breweries. I worked in Lacasera. This is even the second time in a long while that ACON is having an advertiser being the chairperson of the Advertising Standard Panel. And that is because the advertisers always feel that the people who chair the Advertising Standard Panel do not feel the same way they feel. So, as an advertiser and a regulator, I know what is right, I know what is wrong, and I know what the code says. And I tell you this, you cannot run a promotion, even if you pass it to FCCPC and pass it to NAFDAC, without stating the finite numbers of materials that you're putting on offer. Everything about regulation is about the interest of the consumers. We know what is happening within our economy, how people swindle people anyhow. You lure me into your promotional campaign that I have prizes to be won, and at the end of the day, you are not stating it. As a junior brand manager in Guinness, when I run a promotion in Guinness, I'll tell you, you have 10 million cash offer on the promotion, you have 3,000 of this material, you have 5,000 of this material. The creative agencies knows how to display those materials and their quantities on posters. So asking you to be authentic and to tell us the truth about the numbers of prizes that you want to give, I don't think it's asking too much. Okay, that's on one bit. And then again, for the superlatives, what is finite, what is infinite? Words like best, for us is finite. For you to say you are the best, and especially when you are operating within a category, you just can't wake up and make a claim. The first thing I said here is how many people have taken their time to read the advertising code of practice? And everybody raised hand. But as many that have raised their hands are still the ones that are breaching the code, meaning that they did not understand what they read. If you read the advertising code of practice, you will understand what we mean by superlatives. If you read the advertising code of practice, you understand what it means by comparative advertising. Someone said here in one of the campaigns that shook the market about Sterling Bank, and I think it was an Easter campaign, he rose like an agege bread. It is the same creative masterpiece that we are being judged of not being excellent in. The same mistake repeated 2-3 years after that by Pig Milk, when he was pierced for our sorrows. Let me tell us, because these are Christian communities and these are issues that can waded into it and they were calm about it. If we were to be the same with the Muslim faithful, I think those companies should either be in ruins now or they should be regretting that kind of advertising. So the rules are there. Take your time, read the advertising code of practice. You will understand what is comparative advertising. You will understand what is superlatives. We can't do this because the reason why we can't do it is that there are several brands within categories. You just can't wake up and say you are the best without substantiation. And I've said it here, the company or the brand that came up and said, we are world number one, we did not discredit that you're world number one, but show us proof, show us substantive evidence why you're world number one. And when they came with those evidence, it is now world number one only in shipment. We're not talking about world number one maybe in consumer choice or consumer love. There could be several world number one, but substantiate what you want to say. So, Advertising Regulatory Council and the team that I chair is not meant to frustrate creativity. By the way, we have 17 people in the panel, in the advertising standard panel, and each of these 17 people have representative of everybody seated here. There are people from MIPAN representing MIPAN. There are representatives from AAN, from BON, from National Council of Women's Society, from CBN, 17. So these 17 people seated in a room with me chairing the panel cannot be completely wrong, especially when they know that they are representing a unit that is also interested in vetting.
All right, fantastic. we're going to wrap up this now, and we're going to wrap it up, and I'm going to close it. We probably need a whole day to discuss all the issues, but permit me to stand up, because the seat is a bit hot. I think that the issues around regulation are things that obviously, as an industry, need to keep on engaging. What I'm hearing is that there's obviously a need to have ongoing conversations. I think that the shifts we're talking about speak to having a greater openness on learning some ways of doing things and greater agility on the part of regulation, regulator. There's issues around also self-regulation. There's issues around ensuring fairness. And so I think that obviously there will be some key takeouts. There are some key takeouts from this session. If I was going to summarize it in 1 or 2 words, it means there needs to be some ongoing engagement between the regulator and every other person within the industry. But bearing in mind the key roles of the regulator and regulation, that ultimately it's about ensuring that the industry grows. So thank you, gentlemen. I know it's been a very vigorous conversation, and I'm sure that the conversations will continue. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. I think a quick photo op and a round of applause. Thank you to the moderator, Mr. Lampe Omolele, and of course the panelists.